Welcome to Diagnosing Dx, the podcast giving diagnostics the platform it deserves. While therapeutics and devices often take center stage, diagnostics is the engine driving precision medicine. I'm your host, David Philby, and each week we spotlight the innovators, breakthroughs, and real-world challenges shaping the future of DX. In this episode of Diagnosing DX, I'm joined by Ben Casavant, co-founder and CEO of Tasso, a company redefining how blood testing works. We discuss how a PhD side project turned into $120 million raised for the diagnostics innovator, why something as simple as a blood draw was overdue for disruption, and how Tasso's Painless at-home device is transforming access for patients around the world. Ben also shares lessons from scaling deep tech innovation and why failing fast can be the most powerful advantage in healthcare. Welcome, Ben, to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on the show because what Tasso are doing and what you've already done actually is really exciting. And I think actually a lot of the diagnostics industry will be really interested to hear it if they don't already know about the great work you guys are doing. So before we do that, it would be great to get an introduction to yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ben Casavant, co-founder and CEO of Tasso. We started Tasso about 12 years back now as a nights and weekends project while I was doing my PhD at the University of Wisconsin. Just a little bit kind of my own history. I'm a biomedical engineer by trade. And really just got interested in diagnostics and really the power that could bring to people everywhere. And so, with that, found that the crux, one of the key pieces that everyone has to do is get a blood draw. And so that was the genesis of Tasso, and we've been growing and building it ever since.
Wow. So this is your idea from your time in academia, studying your PhD. How long ago was that?
Yeah, so I finished my PhD in 2013. So yeah, that would make it about 12 years ago.
Wow. That's a success in itself, isn't it? To take an idea from your time studying and still 12, 13 years later as the CEO of the company to still be here is a huge success.
It's been interesting, the whole evolution and journey, and building a company and building a business, as you and probably the listeners know, is challenging and never a straight path. So no, it's been a really interesting journey with Tasso. It's been a lot of fun, and we've had a chance to partner with some really phenomenal people and really some great companies. And like you mentioned at the beginning, seeing some of the success now that's really starting to take off. It's been really exciting to really be a part of and help push forward.
Amazing. But we're going to get really deep into this. But just to give me to frame it before I ask my first question, how big is Tasso now?
Yeah, so we're about 70 people now, headquartered in Seattle. Although we have people from all over the U.S. right now that work with Tasso.
So 12, 13 years ago, you're studying your PhD. You have an idea. Did you ever see yourself as the CEO of a 70-man business? Did you ever feel like a leader or have those sort of skills, or how have you been able to navigate that? Because it's such a vast difference between where you were when the idea started to where you are now. How have you managed that?
Yeah, it's constant growth and constant learning, right? I remember I was sitting down with the team. It was like an open mic sort of setup, and somebody asked exactly that question, would you have imagined that you'd be here now? And I always say no. Like, there's no way that I would have imagined Tasso being where it is, me being where I am, like all of the things when we initially started, right? Like, I think at the time it was really, hey, here's this cool idea, right? This one of the key stories that I like to tell early on is, I was working on a circulating tumor cells ctDNA project, right, for patients with prostate cancer, among other cancers, and I just vividly remember this one patient. We saw the CTCs go crazy, but they didn't get any of their other traditional measures. And we called him up. He was, he's like, well, I live 3-4 hours away from Madison. Take a whole day to like get there and do all these things. He's like, let me just
Mm.
go next time I'm seeing my doctor. Um, and the story goes, he never made it to that visit. And so for something as simple as that blood draw, right? Something for as simple as a blood test, for that to be so inaccessible, it's just incomprehensible, really, in today's day and age. And so, you know, when we kicked things off, it was really just an exciting potential, right? This has the chance to touch just about everyone's lives. There are 1 billion blood draws that happen per year in the U.S. And so when we started off, as a nights and weekends project, it was just, hey, let's see if we can dive into the science. Let's see if we can figure something out that makes it painless and easy for anyone to do. And, then growing that into getting our first grant, getting our second grant, hiring the first couple of people. We were a 4-person team for a long time. All through that journey, it was really about asking ourselves, how do we chart the path to what's next? How do we figure out what's the next key to unlock the next bunch of value? What's the real way that we can really help people out, help companies out, help the patients out, and push the technology forward? And I've been lucky to have a great partner in Erwin Berthier, who's a co-founder as well, every step of that journey. But no, I mean, to your exact point, there are twists and turns, but it's always about just figuring out what comes next, challenging yourself, learning as much as you can about all of these principles of growing a company, leadership, learning from amazing mentors and advisors that you meet along the way, in order to keep that step ahead.
Yeah, wow. How was your role changed in terms of I assume very sort of product heavy in the early quarters and years, and to now, how has it evolved and the sort of skills that you've picked up along the way because of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the early days, it was let's see if we can actually get something to work, right? And so it's very heavy engineering and just
Mm.
did a lot of 3D printing, a lot of design, and just trying to hack things together. But very quickly, and even in those early days, it evolves into really all the people skills, right? It's figuring out, how do you recruit people into your company to help out either directly as an employee or indirectly through, being an advisor, getting people who can, who are skilled entrepreneurs in their own right to help with the journey. All of that I think is really what helps you accelerate and grow. And so, figuring out really how to sell all the way through, right? You need to sell the story, sell the vision to people that fund you, whether it's with grants or in the venture community, figuring out people who you can sell to come join and help push this vision and push the product forward. And so I think that the role slowly shifts into that, right? Into
Mm.
figuring out from the, how do you get the nuts and bolts of actually seeing if there's a there, into a how do you recruit people in to just join the story, to join really, what we like to say is really that, revolution or that movement to really help out and push the whole thing forward, for a variety of different roles that you end up needing as you grow a business.
Interesting. I could ask you tens more questions on your own journey, I'm sure, but I'm sure you don't want to tell your life story. So we absolutely should talk about the product, right? And Tasso. So um, give me an insight into who are Tasso, what is the product, and what's its purpose?
Yeah. So the way I always like to start the pitch with Tasso is that I'm sure if I asked you, well, you heard this already, but I'm sure if I asked you if you enjoyed the last time you had a blood draw, your answer would probably be no. But if you think about the whole experience of it, right? You have to take time out of your day. You have to drive into a clinic, sit in a waiting room. Which, by the way, I was astounded. Even some of the like people that run a lot of those sort of phlebotomy centers have the same sort of loathing of sitting in that waiting room. So it's a
Mm.
very shared human experience. And then at the end of all of that, you're met with this big needle that they poke in your vein, right? Let alone the fact that then that all that information then goes back to somewhere, it goes back to your doctor, who knows, and whether or not it's filtered back to you in a way that is proactive and that you can take control of, all of that is kind of left to the side, right? And so if you
Mm.
think about the whole process, it really leaves patients by on the wayside. And so for Tasso, we looked at that whole process of getting this critical diagnostic information, of which there are about 10 billion tests that happen per year in the US. it drives 70% of medical decision making. So it's a critically needed thing. And yet that's the process that we ask people to go through. And so for Tasso, we focused in on first, the blood draw piece of it itself. We said, okay, how do we just focus on the fact that you're stuck with a big needle? Is there a way that you can make that easy to do? Is there a way that we can make that painless, and really simple for anyone to do? So that's where we invented the device. It was a blood draw device that was a simple press of a red button. You put it on your upper arm, you press the button. In the span of a few minutes, it collects a blood sample into a small tube, and then we can send that off to various labs. Can then run it for whatever they need to test for. And so, as principle, that's what we really focus on, is how do we just get that blood draw working? As we got that piece working, it was okay. Now, how do we connect that into the rest of the ecosystem and really help make sure that it's seamless for the fact that diagnostics are used in a lot of different settings in a lot of different ways? So how do you make sure that it all connects all the way through, to really deliver that amazing experience for patients?
Wow. What I have to ask this on a personal level. What does it actually feel like then when it's doing the blood draw?
Yeah, so the statistics are on a 0 to 10 scale, it's at or less than a 1, but that's hard to feel, right? Like, I think the thing that we've really found, and one example is we're used in Major League Baseball for a lot of the anti-doping testing, along with a lot of the Olympic athletes and athletics in general, and the reason why we were selected for these things is, if you ask people to pick their finger, right? You have a bunch of nerve endings on your
I
finger. It's
hate that.
painful. Yeah, it's terrible, right? And then you're bleeding, you have a Band-Aid, and if you have to type or whatever, it's just a
Yep.
terrible experience. Or you have a venipuncture draw, right, where you're being stuck with a needle, and a large percentage of people actually, surprisingly, are needle phobic or have anxiety around getting a blood draw through a needle. And so, but these are our core experiences, right? That's all we know. We know that. We know getting stuck with a vaccine and all of those things with these big, scary needles and this pain and anxiety, all of that. When people use our device, it sticks on the upper arm. You press the button, you hardly feel anything, if anything at all, right? You just a little pressure, you hear a click, and most people are like, did it work? I don't know. They're looking at it, and then blood starts flowing, and it's like, wow, that was it. And so really, it's just this revolutionary experience. It really is just completely different than anything you've experienced as far as diagnostic testing is concerned. And so, what we see is after people use it once, they're very open and excited to use it again if for subsequent tests or whatever they need. And back to the baseball story, right? The players are really put in the forefront in a really phenomenal way in all these things. And so you're asking these players, hey, do you want to prick your finger or like be stabbed with a big needle? Or, hey, how about this painless device? They're like, yeah, we'll go with the painless device, right? Because if given that choice, if given that option, I think people are looking for that better experience and that better way that they can interact with this critical information.
Wow. Um, the product development of it initially, in terms, how did you go from idea to sort of fully functioning, I guess, prototype, and then sort of commercialized product? Because what you've invented sounds like something completely novel, and how do you go through that process?
Yeah, we tried to really in the early stages break it down into as much first principle as we possibly could, right? We said, okay, what are the components of a blood test, right? What are the things that need to happen? And you know, if you break down the whole thing, right, it's like, okay, you need a pokey thing, you need some sort of tube that it goes into or some sort of area that it goes into, and you need a vacuum, right? Because BD vacuutators are all vacuum tubes. And so by breaking it down into those core bits, we then were able to optimize for each piece of it, even though it looked like a behemoth like thing at the time, right? We had like a 3D printed thing with a big balloon over it, and it was pretty rough and tumble early on. But what it helped us do is figure out, hey, what sort of pressure do we need to generate? What are the different pokey things that we need to do? And so by breaking it down into those pieces, we were able to scientifically really drill into, okay, how do we optimize for every piece of that journey? And so that we could actually get to a product launch. And early on, man, I mean, we had a 3D printer in the office that was running nonstop. I mean, it was just, as soon as we had an idea, it was printing, took it off, cleaned it off, tried it, and printing the next thing, right? It was iterating as fast as we could, and just given that speed of focus that helped us really iterate through and get to our first product.
Have you had to personally do like thousands of blood
Oh,
draws to test?
thousands, just so many blood tests. It's just crazy. Although we actually had to drop a finger stick. So in the early on days, we were comparing ourselves to a finger stick.
Yeah.
But our device is painless, and you have this finger stick that's poking, like 10 finger, you only have so many fingers. We actually had to drop the finger stick component of it. I will give the excuse that that's partially because people wouldn't volunteer for it, but also I would just not want to keep poking my finger because it's very painful.
I hate
It's
it. Yeah.
just an unpleasant experience. So yeah, just we've had to do so many blood tests, so many blood draws through the years, and just there's no way to learn from your own product than by doing it yourself.
Yeah, fair play. You mentioned obviously there's like 10 billion blood draws per year in the US, and you've also mentioned a few different industries that benefit there, right? In terms of the diagnostics industry is an obvious one, but major sport and stuff like that. Where do you see? Are you going after the whole market, or are you specifically trying to tackle sort of specific industries with specific needs? And is there certain patients that unfortunately have to go through blood draws very frequently because of conditions they have and stuff like that need this more than anyone? What is the sort of the real needs that you're going after initially, and then long term?
Yeah, I think, it's exciting to think about revolutionizing an industry that hasn't been changed in 100 years. There's so many options available, which is challenging for a company, any company, and a startup. And so for us, we're focusing on those areas of high need, right? It's areas that have frequent testing that needs to happen, right? If you're somebody that's constantly having to go into a clinic, that's a lot of burden. It also
Mm,
means that on the other side, that information is critical to managing your condition or disease. And so if we can simplify that, make it higher compliance, all of those things, that gives you a real benefit in terms of the healthcare outcome. If we think about people that are hard to access, we've worked a lot with groups that are really helping to outreach to patients, whether they're in a clinical trial or some other sort of study. We're working with the Parkinson's Foundation on research that is just incredibly powerful in that regard, and seeing the benefit of people with this neurological disease getting something at home that they can do themselves is really empowering, and just really helps to get healthcare into places that it's critically needed. So
yeah.
those are the types of things that we're working on now with a wide variety of partners.
That's awesome, isn't it? That's awesome that if there's critical needs or conditions in remote places, which there obviously is all over, it's one of the biggest challenges, um, that you're able to bring them an at-home solution that can be frequent and consistent and painless. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
amazing.
And worldwide too, right? A lot of the partners we're working with in the UK are doing exactly that, where they're delivering this to patients at home, and they're able to get that diagnostic information back to the physicians who need it, and really by doing so are able to connect people who live in a wide variety of places, who come from a wide variety of backgrounds, and really tie everyone into healthcare in a way that's just better, and better for the patients, better for the system. And so we're incredibly excited about the global impact that a technology like Tasso has.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, you've mentioned that the industry was primed for disruption. Is there other products or competition may be the wrong word, but is there other products or sort of ideas that people are bringing to life to solve the same problem? And I guess where are they against Tasso in terms of their development or commercialized state?
Yeah, there are a variety of technologies and approaches that people are having from other devices like ours, or even things that are leveraging finger sticks or ways to bring this closer to the patient. Robot phlebotomist, all of the thing. We're seeing just an explosion of interest in this space. But for us, we're really just focused on how do we solve the need for the patient and the customer as effectively as we can. How can we really dive in to make sure that we're really solving the full need, or as full as possible, for these patients. Because at the end of the day, I think because of how widespread all of this is, there's a ton of opportunity
Yeah.
ahead, and it's about figuring out, how can we really make sure that we're solving that patient need in a holistic way to make sure that we're serving them well.
Yeah, makes sense. If you also focus on the patient, is is there a challenge with education in terms of how patients are knowing this exists and therefore are not putting things off or avoiding or even maybe the opposite, maybe just complete, naivety because is education a big part of the sort of success of the business and being able to get it into, patients' lives?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think there's a breadth that we'll need to get to, but one of the things that we find really exciting about our technology is because of how differentiated it is, because of how much of an interesting experience it is for people to use. We're seeing that sort of almost like a grassroots interest in Tasso. Where actually just my brother texted me yesterday where Diplo, this like famous DJ, had a device on his arm that showed up in his Instagram feed or something like that. And so, we're starting to see people that post about it because they're like, wow, like I did this thing and it was like really interesting. And that helps spread the word in a very organic way because, we're not doing a ton of marketing today. We're really focused on working with our partners and, helping them out as much as we can. But seeing that reaction from people who are like, oh my gosh, I did this thing and it was so different. And here you go. Like, it's really exciting to see people so excited about something as routine as a blood draw that they're wanting to post about it in their social channels. They're wanting to really tell the world about this amazing thing that they're doing. So we're really excited to see that in terms of organic growth.
So paying global DJs isn't part of your marketing plan just yet.
No, no, not an explicit part of the plan. No.
That's amazing when there's that organic spread of something good, right? And it's your product. That's incredible. Um, where's you mentioned earlier you're up to about 70 headcount, but let me know the story of the company up until this point in terms of where you are. Have you raised capital, the growth, the milestones you've achieved already? Give me an insight into that.
Yeah, for sure. So, Tasso's gone through a fair amount of evolution through the years. When we started off very small, racked up some credit card charges and just, life support on the business.
Mm.
But, we really were lucky and fortunate to partner with DARPA in the early days in the Department of Defense, who really put in the first funding in the form of a grant, really with this exact vision of sample and send, right? In those early days, they were like, well, there are these people that are stationed wherever they are.
Yeah.
And then there's the amazing technology and the diagnostics that's back in the lab. What we're doing today is either trying to miniaturize that technology and bring it to the patient or have them ship off back to the lab. And they're like, why don't we just leave both things where they are and just send the samples? Like that seems like a great way to do things. So we partnered with them in the early days and really had an amazing chance to work with some talented people at DARPA and then into the DoD more broadly. Um, and through that we were able to grow the business and grow the technology really by completing the grants and paralleling the commercial efforts with the grant milestones. So that really helped lead us to really our first product, our first, actual full product that worked and manufacturable, all of the things. And then from there, we then started working with industry. We started really working with pharmaceutical companies, in Merck and others, where then, they said, hey, we have the specific need in PK,
Brilliant.
pharmacokinetics, where you need to measure the drugs as they go, as somebody takes it to measure peak and trough levels, all of these things. And so again, that helped push us forward to say, okay, how are we solving a specific problem as opposed to this big broad problem, which really, helped refine the product even further. We then raised venture capital through the years and through about 3 rounds of funding, brought in about $120 million of financing. And that has really helped us iterate on the product further and then grow and scale. It helped us really ramp up from, 16 people during the grant phase of the business up into this 70-person business we are today. And, bring the product from, hey, here's how we can do PK into, how do we do broader blood testing? How do we help with more blood draws? People always want more blood volume. So how do we do that? How do we expand into other verticals? How do we expand our commercial presence, and really, round out all of the other pieces of the business as we scale? And so to date, we've now gotten about 2 million blood draw devices out in the world, helped about 2 million people with their blood draws, which is really humbling to think about from those early beginning days. But we're excited to really see people have a great experience all the way through, and to be helping people out with a variety of needs that they have.
Wow. Congratulations, Ben. 2 million. That's amazing, isn't it? That's
Yeah, no, it's
profound.
exciting and crazy to think about. But yeah, 2 million, and in some ways, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. So we're excited for what comes next.
I have to ask this. Have you failed at all? Has there been failures along the way?
All the time, absolutely, every single step of the way. No, I'm serious though. Like, people, there's a saying of fail fast. I think what it's more about is just get the learnings, right? You're going to run into all sorts of walls. It's about figuring out what are the first principles. How can you boil it down to, okay, what are the pieces that I can then improve upon to really get to the next stage of things? So no, we failed every single step of the way. I mean, we're on version, gosh, it must be like 20 or 25 of the device at this point. And there's only so much you can learn by putting a device on your own arm or your friend's arms.
Yeah.
Getting it out into the world and doing millions of blood draws, you're going to learn a whole lot of things about a whole lot of different settings and scenarios. And to me, and what I tell everyone is, in Tasso is, I'm very focused on you're not going to have a perfect product, but you must have a perfect response. You have
Mm,
to iterate, you have to improve, you have to take the feedback, you have to listen and learn every step of the journey. Because if you do, you can truly then make something amazing. You can really bring people in, you can bring ideas, bring feedback, and figure out how to make everything better. But if you don't, and you're just focused on making a perfect thing out the gates, I'm some people can do that. Some people are very talented and have that crystal ball. But I think for most people, it's about getting something in the world and getting your idea out there and seeing what happens and making sure you're listening to the feedback, because people want to improve it, right? They want to give
yeah.
you feedback. Say, hey, what about this? What about that? Have you thought about this other thing? And taking that in and really forcing yourself to listen can help you improve and make a product that is beloved by your customers and by patients.
Well said. Thank you, Ben. Where do you see the company going then into the future then? What does the future of Tasso look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking forward in healthcare, we're at this amazing point where, people's health information is starting to become accessible to them. I always like to liken the ads that you'll get popping up on your Instagram or whatever, right? It'll say, well, here's your favorite band, here's your, size of your pants, here's your colors that would go really well with your,
Yeah.
with your personality. And then you go to a doctor, and my wife's a doctor, by the way, so no slight to doctors, but you go to a physician and they're checking your chart, saying, okay, what's your name again? Like, where is your. And so I think we're at this moment where all of that information is starting to be easier to obtain. It's starting to be more accessible. And we're starting to see with AI and some of the other tools, like what you can actually do with the data. How can you make it more interpretable? How can you improve some of these core diagnostics that people are relying on for a variety of treatments and diseases? And so for Tasso in that future, I'm excited to play a part in figuring out how can we accelerate access to that data? How can we make it easier to obtain? How can we help bring that back to patients in a way that's digestible, in that sort of future that has all that health information very accessible?
Yeah, because you're at the forefront of the obviously you're the ones taking the blood draw, and then what you do with that in terms of extracting data from it. And do you see yourself using the data that you can access and gather as something that you would like to convert into something insightful for patients, or do you see you using that data to go out to companies who specialize in that sort of you know, personalized healthcare and go, hey, we've got this incredible data. You can use this to provide better, you know, healthcare to your patients.
Yeah, I really am focused on it because, of course, there's with all the privacy concerns and all of the rest, there's a lot tangled in there. But I like to focus back on patients, right? Thinking about the patients and the patient journey. Um, one of the key things that these devices can do is, because it's not a finger stick, because you're not, tapping somebody in a vein, you can imagine a frequency of doing these tests that are painless and easy to do, and as easy as pressing a button or brushing your teeth or whatever. You can imagine now a frequency of data that is something that hasn't been done before and hasn't been very accessible or broadly used. And so thinking about patients, if you're living with a chronic disease, if you are on some sort of treatment or on multiple treatments, how can that data stream help change how you are managing your own health, or how your physician or how your caregiver is then adjusting their health decisions with more fidelity of information? I look at a lot of what's been happening with the continuous glucose monitoring, right? And looking at how that has fundamentally changed not only diabetes care, but now it's starting to go into weight loss care, weight loss management, like how you can do amazing things with a higher fidelity of information, I think is right there at our fingertips. And so, for Tasso, I'm excited to play hopefully a role in bringing about that future.
I agree with that. I think even if you don't have a critical condition, the way the world is going, it does feel like people are so in tune with their own health these days that if you said to them, you need to use this device on a frequent basis, whatever that basis is, and it's actually going to give you insights just in terms of your general health, and you need to change this, you need to work on this, and so forth before serious conditions ever kick in. Young, healthy people who just want better insights and data into how, the realities of what's going on inside. I think the world is on the brink of that, isn't it? People want that stuff.
Absolutely.
People want it on their phone now. Like they want to know what's going on inside their body.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what's been tracing through, right? Hats off to Fitbit and some of these early step counters where people said, "Oh, wait a second, like, I can see something about my health information that then translate into
Right.
how I feel." I think we're seeing an acceleration of that. So no, absolutely. I think, not just not just disease patients or people with chronic disease, but for just about everyone, right? How do you uncover some of these underlying conditions? How do you put some data to how people are feeling, right? Aging is a process that everyone goes through all the time, and thinking about how I can optimize that, how can I take control of
Yeah.
my own health? I think that's absolutely a revolution that's happening today, and we're incredibly excited to see how that unfolds as well.
Yeah. 100%. How is it, do you think, that Tasso is set up as a business to succeed? What is it that you think outside of the product? Because obviously, even you're iterating the product, so it's not like it's a product and now you're going to the product's improving all the time. How do you think Tasso is set up to sort of survive and thrive in a market, and why are they a successful business just beyond the science?
Yeah, I mean, I would say even before the science and before the product, it's all about the people. We've been incredibly lucky and fortunate to have worked with an amazing team through the years. All the way through. We have some really talented folks that are in Tasso, and in a lot of ways, I think one of our advisors said early on, or somebody gave me the advice that, your people are your product. At the end of the day, everyone who works in Tasso is paramount to Tasso's success. These are every single one of us add in to how do you build and grow and continue to improve not only the product but the whole business all the way through.
Yeah.
And so I think that really helps us out for success, is the amazing talented teammates that we have, that are really bringing in new perspectives and new ideas, and helping to really help Tasso grow and thrive, and figure out how do we navigate new situations, new competitors, or new patient situations, or new customers who have various needs. It's the team that really helps to that really makes all of that happen every single day. So I would definitely say it's the team that will help us in that future.
Great. And future milestones, what should we be looking out for Tasso over the sort of next 6-12 months and beyond? What comes next?
Yeah, I mean, we're really seeing a ramp up in growth, so we're excited to cross over more device milestones. Of course, we're working with the FDA to expand what we can do on the as a full in test, so not just the blood draw itself, but looking at the full test. So we're excited to keep working with them in that way, and just continue paving the way to that future that you said. Right? How do we just bring that health data and bring health information to the forefronts of patients everywhere? So we're excited to be continuing on that journey.
What does the future hold in terms of private company now still? Is that right?
Yep. Yep. Privately held.
Privately held. Potential IPOs, potential acquisitions. I'm sure you've had a bit of interest already.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely a dream of ours, right? Is ringing that bell like any entrepreneur
Yeah, that'd be
would,
awesome. Yeah.
for sure. But no, look, we're focused on building and growing the business every step of the way, and there will be various financing opportunities in that future. Maybe one of them is going public, but right now, we're focused on growing and building the business. So that's immediately ahead for us.
The perfect answer then. And what's your outlook on the diagnostics market and the innovation in the space at the moment?
Yeah, I'm very excited about the innovation and everything that's been happening in the diagnostics world. I think all the way through from people that are working on new diagnostic tests themselves. We're seeing more and more things happen with neurodegenerative
Mm.
diseases, all the way through to better personalized health tests. Seeing new proteomic tests that are coming out. It's all the way through. It's really exciting. And so I think on that side of the world, we're really excited to see the innovations that are popping up every single day.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for the insight today. Is there anything else that we missed that you think is important that we should share?
No, I think we covered a lot. Really, really appreciate the time and chance to tell Tasso's story.
It's an awesome story, and I'm sure there's areas and pockets of the diagnostics industry that will really enjoy hearing this is existing, but it's also thriving as well, and the growth you're seeing is awesome. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story.
Thanks for having me.